The thunderous applause echoed through the massive auditorium as another graduate walked across the stage, diploma in hand, beaming with pride. Frank Miller stood at the far corner of the room, leaning against his mop, watching through tired eyes. 20 years he'd cleaned these floors. 20 years he'd watched other people's children graduate while working double shifts to ensure his own daughter would have the same chance someday. "Hey, janitor, you missed a spot!" A group of parents in expensive attire snickered as one of them pointed to a non-existent stain on the polished floor. Frank simply nodded and moved his mop toward them, the familiar weight of humiliation settling on his shoulders like an old friend. The laughter grew louder. "Leave some champagne for the rest of us," another called out when Frank reached for a fallen napkin near their celebration table. "It's not like you've got anything to celebrate tonight." More laughter. Frank kept his eyes down, focusing on the reflection of the overhead lights on the freshly mopped floor. He'd learned long ago that invisibility was safer than dignity. Then it happened. Principal Edwards, mid-speech at the podium, paused unexpectedly. The microphone caught his sharp intake of breath as he scanned the audience, his eyes finally landing on Frank in the corner. "Before we continue with our ceremony," Principal Edwards said, his voice cutting through the celebratory chatter, "there's someone else who should be recognized tonight." The crowd fell silent, confusion rippling through the sea of graduation gowns and proud parents. "Frank Miller, would you please come to the stage?" The silence turned heavy. Every eye in the building shifted to Frank, who stood frozen, mop still in hand. The same people who had been laughing moments before now stared with curiosity and confusion. But to understand how the night came to this moment, we have to go back to where it all started. 7 months earlier. Frank arrived at Westridge High School at 4:30 in the morning, just like he had every school day for the past 2 decades. The empty hallways were his kingdom in these early hours, before teachers arrived and students filled the space with their youthful energy. In the quiet darkness, Frank moved methodically from classroom to classroom, emptying trash cans, wiping down surfaces, and ensuring everything was perfect before the first bell. Frank hadn't always been a janitor. Once, he'd been a promising engineering student with a full scholarship to State University. That was before Maria got sick during his sophomore year, before the medical bills piled up, before they discovered she was pregnant despite the doctor saying it would be impossible with her condition. "It's our miracle," Maria had whispered from her hospital bed, her hand resting on her swollen belly. 2 months later, little Sophia came into the world, beautiful and perfect in every way. 3 months after that, Maria left it, leaving Frank with a broken heart, insurmountable debt, and a baby daughter who had her mother's eyes. The scholarship disappeared when Frank's grades slipped during Maria's illness. The engineering career vanished when he had to drop out to care for his newborn daughter. But Sophia gave him purpose. Every floor he mopped, every toilet he cleaned, every piece of gum he scraped from beneath a desk, it was all for her, for the future he was determined she would have. As Sophia grew, so did Frank's determination. He worked at the school during the day and took a second job at a warehouse at night. The few hours between jobs were sacred, time spent helping Sophia with homework, cooking dinner, and being the best father he could be with the limited resources they had. "Dad, you don't have to come to my science fair tomorrow," 12-year-old Sophia said one evening as Frank checked her project, a detailed model of the solar system with a motor he'd helped her salvage from an old toy to make the planets rotate. "I know you have to work." Frank looked up from the spinning planets, meeting his daughter's eyes, Maria's eyes. I've never missed a science fair, Soph. I'm not starting now. But Mr. Peterson said you left the floors streaky last time you rushed, Sophia replied, her voice small. I don't want you to get in trouble. Frank's heart clenched. Children shouldn't worry about such things. Mr. Peterson can deal with slightly streaky floors for one day, he said with more confidence than he felt. Your solar system is going to blow everyone away. And it did. Sophia won first place, her project standing out among those created with expensive kits and parental help from engineers, doctors, and scientists. Frank stood at the back of the room, still in his janitor uniform, pride swelling in his chest as Sophia explained the mechanics of her homemade motor to the judges. Tell us in the comments if you've ever had to make sacrifices for someone you love. Would you work 2 jobs like Frank to give your child a better future? As the years passed, Sophia blossomed. Despite their financial limitations, she excelled academically, joined the debate team, and developed a passion for physics that reminded Frank of his own abandoned dreams. By her junior year, she was at the top of her class, with teachers predicting scholarship offers from top universities. Frank's heart soared with every achievement, but anxiety gnawed at him too. College meant expenses beyond tuition, housing, books, supplies, transportation. He picked up weekend shifts at the warehouse, cutting his sleep down to 3 or 4 hours a night. The exhaustion was worth it when college brochures began arriving in their small apartment mailbox. Then came the accident. Frank had been working 17 days straight without a day off when he fell asleep at the wheel driving home from his warehouse shift. The crash left him with a broken leg, 3 cracked ribs, and the warehouse job permanently gone. The medical bills compounded their already precarious financial situation. Dad, I can get a part-time job, Sophia suggested, sitting beside his hospital bed, her college application essays temporarily forgotten. Absolutely not, Frank interrupted, wincing as he shifted in the uncomfortable bed. Your job is school, that's it. But no buts, Soph, we'll figure it out. But figuring out became increasingly difficult. Frank returned to the janitorial position at reduced hours while his leg healed. The mortgage payment on their small apartment fell behind. The college application fees loomed impossibly large. One night, Frank sat at their kitchen table after Sophia had gone to bed. Surrounded by bills marked final notice and past due, and wept for the first time since Maria died. The next morning, Principal Edwards found Frank in the supply closet, organizing cleaning products with mechanical precision despite his still healing leg. Frank, I need to speak with you, the principal said, his voice unusually serious. Frank's stomach dropped. Had there been complaints about his work? Was he about to lose this job too? Your daughter stopped by my office yesterday, Principal Edwards continued. She was quite concerned about you. Heat rushed to Frank's face. Sir, I apologize if Sophia bothered you. I'll speak with her. No, Frank, Edwards interrupted gently. She didn't bother me. She impressed me. She told me about your accident, about your financial situation. She also showed me her college applications. Frank looked down at his weathered hands. Sophia is very bright. She'll make something of herself one day. She already has, Edwards replied. Frank, did you know she's valedictorian? With her grades and test scores, she's practically guaranteed a full ride wherever she applies. Pride momentarily overcame embarrassment. She works very hard. So do you, Edwards said. Which is why I want to offer you something. The school has a fund for emergency staff assistance. We'd like to help with your medical bills. Frank's throat tightened. I don't take charity, sir. Edwards sighed. It's not charity, Frank. It's support for a valued member of our staff. Besides, there's something else. He paused. Sophia told me you were an engineering student before she was born. The old pain surfaced, dreams abandoned, potential unfulfilled. That was a long time ago. Not too long, Edwards replied. Our physics teacher, Mr. Baxter, is struggling with the advanced placement class. The students need more specialized help than he can provide, especially with the robotics competition coming up. We need a tutor. Someone with engineering knowledge? Frank stared at him in disbelief. Sir, I never finished my degree. I barely completed 2 years. But you remember it, don't you? Edwards asked. Sophia said you help her with calculus and physics problems that even Mr. Baxter struggles with. Frank shifted uncomfortably. Those late nights working through complex equations with Sophia were some of his happiest moments, when the janitor uniform fell away and the student he'd once been emerged from the shadows. We can pay you for tutoring hours, Edwards continued. It would be after your regular shift, of course. Why would you do this? Frank asked, suspicion edging his voice. Edwards' expression softened. Because everyone deserves a second chance, Frank, even janitors. The tutoring began the following week. At first, the AP Physics students regarded Frank with skepticism and barely disguised disdain. The janitor teaching physics? Several parents called to complain. But when test scores began improving dramatically, when complex concepts suddenly became clear under Frank's patient guidance, the skepticism transformed into respect. All except for one student, James Whitmore, son of the school board president, and a boy who'd never faced a consequence in his privileged life. James made it his mission to undermine Frank at every turn, making snide remarks about the janitor teacher and openly questioning Frank's qualifications. My father says it's inappropriate for maintenance staff to pretend they're educators, James announced loudly one afternoon as Frank explained a particularly difficult concept related to their robotics project. The room fell silent. The other students shifted uncomfortably. Frank set down his marker. That's an interesting perspective, James. Would you like to take over explaining how to calculate the proper gear ratio for the robotic arm? James smirked. That's what the software is for. We just plug in the numbers. And when the software fails? Frank asked quietly. When you're in competition and something breaks, will you understand the underlying principles well enough to make adjustments? That's what engineers are for, James replied dismissively. Some people calculate, others clean up. That's just how the world works. The words stung, but Frank had developed thick skin over 2 decades of similar comments. You're right that the world works that way sometimes, James, but it doesn't have to. In this room, everyone calculates, everyone builds, and yes, everyone cleans up their own mess. As the weeks passed, the tutoring sessions became the highlight of Frank's day. The students, even James, reluctantly, began to show improvement. Their robotics project took shape, a complex machine designed to solve a series of tasks more efficiently than those of competing schools. Frank found himself staying late long after the tutoring hours he was paid for, working alongside the students as their creation evolved. Have you ever been underestimated because of your job or appearance? Share your experience in the comments below. Meanwhile, Sophia thrived in her senior year. College acceptance letters arrived. Harvard, MIT, Stanford, all with the promised full scholarships. Frank had never felt prouder, even as his heart ached knowing she would soon leave their small apartment for a world of opportunities he had only glimpsed before life intervened. Dad, look what came today, Sophia exclaimed one evening, bursting through the door with an envelope bearing the MIT logo. It's about the summer orientation program. Frank looked up from the robotics calculations he'd been reviewing. That's wonderful, Soph. When is it? That's the thing, she said, her excitement dimming slightly. It's the same weekend as graduation. I'd have to leave right after the ceremony to make it to Cambridge on time. Then that's what we'll do, Frank said firmly. I'll see if I can get a few days off to drive you there. Sophia sat beside him at their small kitchen table. Dad, you don't have to do that. I can take the bus. You need to save your vacation days for emergencies. Frank reached for her hand. Sophia Miller, your graduation and the start of your college journey is not some mundane event I'm willing to miss. I've waited 18 years to see you walk across that stage. Wild horses couldn't keep me away. Certainly not a cleaning schedule. Sophia's eyes, Maria's eyes, filled with tears. I got another letter too, she said, pulling a second envelope from her backpack. I've been named valedictorian. Pride exploded in Frank's chest. Of course you have, he whispered, pulling her into a tight embrace. Your mother would be so proud of you, Soph. So incredibly proud. As graduation approached, Frank threw himself into preparations. He secretly saved to buy Sophia a new dress for the ceremony. Putting aside a few dollars from each paycheck, he worked with the robotics team during the day and took extra shifts cleaning office buildings on weekends to afford the gas for the drive to MIT. Every sacrifice was worth it for the future Sophia had earned through her brilliance and determination. 2 weeks before graduation, disaster struck. The robotics competition, which had been scheduled for the fall, was suddenly moved up to graduation day due to a conflict with the hosting university's calendar. The announcement threw the team into panic, months of work potentially wasted because their key competition team members would be walking across the graduation stage instead of operating their robot. We have to withdraw, Mr. Baxter said during an emergency meeting. There's no way around it. We can't ask the seniors to miss their graduation. What if you had another operator? Frank suggested quietly from the back of the room. All eyes turned to him. I know the machine as well as anyone. I helped build it. James Whitmore snorted. No offense, Mr. Miller, but this is a prestigious competition. The judges expect to see students operating the robots, not maintenance staff. The familiar heat of humiliation crept up Frank's neck. Before he could respond, another student spoke up. Mr. Miller knows more about robotics than anyone in this room, said Eliza Chen, one of the quietest yet brightest students. He's the reason our design works at all. That's true, another student chimed in, and the rules only specify that the operator has to be affiliated with the school. There's nothing saying it has to be a student. Mr. Baxter looked thoughtful. It's unorthodox, but it might work. Frank, are you sure? The competition is in the next city over. You'd miss Sophia's graduation speech. The choice was impossible. Miss his daughter's valedictorian address, the culmination of 18 years of sacrifice and determination, or let down these students who had come to respect and depend on him. Frank closed his eyes briefly, imagining Sophia on that stage without him in the audience. I'll talk to Sophia, he said finally. Let me think about it. That night, Frank explained the situation to his daughter, the words catching in his throat. I don't know what to do, Soph. This team has worked so hard, but your graduation. Sophia listened thoughtfully, then smiled. Maria's smile. Dad, do you remember what you always told me about education? That it's the one thing no one can ever take away from you, Frank replied. Exactly. And what those students have learned from you, that doesn't end with a competition or a ceremony. You've changed how they see the world. She reached for his hand. I think you should go with the robotics team. But your speech will be recorded, she finished for him. And I'll save you the best parts for when you get back. Besides, you've seen me speak plenty of times. Those kids need you for this one day. You've been there for me for 18 years. Frank felt tears threatening. How had he and Maria created this remarkable, selfless young woman? "Are you sure?" "Positive," Sophia said. "Just promise you'll make it back in time to drive me to MIT the next day." The decision made, Frank threw himself into final preparations for the competition. The team worked tirelessly, making last-minute adjustments to their robot. Even James Whitmore seemed to have developed a grudging respect for Frank's knowledge and dedication. The day before graduation, Principal Edwards called Frank into his office. "I understand you'll be missing the ceremony tomorrow to represent our school at the robotics competition," he said. Frank nodded, still feeling the weight of his choice. "Sophia understands. It's important to the students." Edwards studied him for a moment. "You know, Frank, in 20 years as an educator, I've never met anyone quite like you. Most people would have become bitter, cleaning up after other people's children while putting their own through school." Frank shrugged uncomfortably. "Sophia deserves every opportunity. The work doesn't matter as long as it gives her that." "But it does matter," Edwards insisted. "The example you've set, for your daughter, for our students. Do you know what James Whitmore said in his college application essay? He wrote about how his perspective on dignity and intelligence was transformed by working with a school janitor who understood engineering better than his expensive tutors." Frank looked up in surprise. "James wrote about me?" Edwards nodded. "Several students did. You've made more of an impact than you realize, Frank." He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully, "which is why I wanted to ask if you'd consider a more formal role next year. Mr. Baxter is retiring, and we'll need someone to assist the new physics teacher with the AP classes and robotics program. It would be part-time to start, but—" "Sir," Frank interrupted, overwhelmed, "I don't have a degree. The school board would never approve." "The board has already approved it," Edwards said with a small smile. "Conditionally, of course. You'd need to complete your degree eventually, but the community college has an evening program. The school would help with tuition." Frank sat in stunned silence. After 20 years of putting his dreams on hold, was it possible they hadn't disappeared entirely? "Think about it," Edwards said. "No need to decide now. Focus on the competition tomorrow." The morning of graduation dawned bright and clear. Frank hugged Sophia tightly before she left for the ceremony, her graduation robe carefully pressed, her valedictorian medal gleaming against the blue fabric. "I'm so proud of you, Soph," he whispered. "More than you'll ever know." "I know, Dad," she replied, her eyes shining. "Now go win that robotics competition." The competition was fierce. Teams from wealthy private schools with state-of-the-art equipment faced off against Frank and the Westridge High students with their more modest but ingeniously designed robot. As Frank guided their creation through the complex tasks, he felt a sense of fulfillment he hadn't experienced since his early college days. This was what he was meant to do: solve problems, build things, pass knowledge to the next generation. In the final round, their robot malfunctioned. A crucial gear slipped out of alignment, threatening disqualification. The students looked to Frank in panic. "We need to recalculate the torque and adjust manually," Frank said calmly, already reaching for the tools. "James, what's the formula for angular momentum in this situation?" Without hesitation, James recited the formula perfectly, then moved to help Frank with the adjustments. Together, the team worked with precise coordination, fixing the problem with seconds to spare. When their robot completed the final task successfully, the audience erupted in applause. They had won. As the judges presented the trophy, Frank stepped back, pushing the students forward to receive the recognition. This was their moment. He checked his watch. The graduation ceremony would be ending soon. If he left immediately, he might catch the tail end, might at least see Sophia with her diploma. "Mr. Miller," James said, approaching him as the team celebrated. We want you to hold the trophy for the photos. We couldn't have done it without you." "That's kind, James, but this is your victory," Frank replied. "I need to try to make to my daughter's graduation." James looked at him with newfound respect. "My father is on the school board. I'll call him and ask them to delay the final remarks. You deserve to see your daughter graduate." Frank was touched by the gesture, but knew it was impossible. "That's not how ceremonies work, but thank you. I'm proud of what you all accomplished today." With a final congratulations to the team, Frank rushed to his old car and drove as fast as legally possible back to Westridge High. His heart sank as he pulled into the parking lot and saw families already streaming out of the auditorium, graduates in their blue robes, hugging relatives, posing for pictures. He had missed it. Frank sat in his car for a moment, fighting back disappointment. Then, straightening his shoulders, he got out and headed toward the building. He would find Sophia, congratulate her properly, tell her about their victory at the competition. As he approached the entrance, still in his team mentor shirt rather than his usual janitor uniform, he noticed people heading back into the auditorium instead of leaving. Confused, Frank followed the crowd. Inside, the ceremony appeared to be continuing. On stage, Principal Edwards was speaking into the microphone. "As is tradition, we've saved our final presentation for after the official graduation ceremony. Many of you have already met our valedictorian, Sophia Miller, who gave a remarkable address earlier. What you may not know is the extraordinary story behind her success." Frank froze at the back of the auditorium. What was happening? Sophia's father, Frank Miller, has been part of our Westridge family for 20 years, Edwards continued. Today, he couldn't be here because he was representing our school at the State Robotics Championship, which I'm pleased to announce our team has won for the first time in school history. Applause erupted through the auditorium. Frank pressed himself against the wall, uncomfortable with the attention, as several heads turned in his direction. Frank began his adult life as a promising engineering student, Edwards was saying. Life circumstances led him to set those dreams aside to raise his daughter as a single father after the tragic loss of his wife. For 20 years, he has worked tirelessly as our school custodian, ensuring our building remains clean, safe, and functional for all of our students, including his own daughter. Frank spotted Sophia on stage, standing beside Principal Edwards, her eyes scanning the crowd. When she saw him at the back of the room, her face lit up. What few people knew until recently, Edwards continued, is that Frank never lost his passion for learning or his exceptional mind for engineering. This year, he has been instrumental in guiding our physics students, transforming our robotics program, and demonstrating that true education transcends titles and uniforms. "Hey, janitor, you missed a spot." The mocking call came from somewhere in the audience, followed by scattered laughter. Frank recognized the voice, James Whitmore's father, a man who had never spoken to Frank directly in all the years his son had attended the school. The familiar heat of humiliation began to rise, but before it could take hold, another voice cut through the laughter. "That janitor just led your son's team to a state championship, Mr. Whitmore," James himself called out, standing up from his seat near the front. "And he taught me more about physics and engineering than all the private tutors you paid for." The auditorium fell silent. "Frank Miller, would you please come to the stage?" Principal Edwards requested, his voice echoing through the stunned audience. Frank stood frozen, unsure what was happening. Sophia looked directly at him, nodding encouragement. Slowly, Frank made his way down the aisle, acutely aware of every eye following his progress. The same people who had walked past him without a glance for years now stared openly. The same floors he had polished countless times now carried his hesitant steps toward the stage. As he climbed the steps, Sophia rushed forward to embrace him. "You made it, Dad," she whispered. "I knew you would." Principal Edwards approached with something in his hands, a diploma-sized folder. "Frank Miller," Edwards said into the microphone, "on behalf of the Board of Education and Westridge High School, I would like to present you with this." He handed Frank the folder. With trembling hands, Frank opened it to find an official certificate inside. "This document recognizes your acceptance into the State University Engineering Completion Program with a full scholarship covering all expenses. After 20 years, you can finally complete the degree you started before your daughter was born." The auditorium erupted in applause, genuine this time, not the mocking laughter from earlier. Frank stared at the certificate in disbelief. "But there's more," Edwards continued when the applause quieted. "In recognition of your outstanding service to this school, your exceptional knowledge, and the profound impact you've had on our students, the school board has unanimously approved your appointment as Assistant Technical Education Coordinator beginning next fall." Frank looked up, meeting Edwards' eyes in shock. "I don't understand," he managed to say, though the microphone didn't catch his words. Edwards smiled. "We believe it's time for you to put down the mop, Frank. Your hands were meant to build, to teach, to transform, just as you've transformed your daughter's life through your sacrifices." Sophia was crying openly now, clutching her father's arm. Frank felt his own eyes filling with tears. 20 years ago," Edwards said, addressing the audience, "a young engineering student faced an impossible choice between his education and caring for his newborn daughter alone. He chose his daughter without hesitation, putting his own dreams on hold indefinitely. Today, as that daughter graduates as valedictorian with a full scholarship to MIT, we have the privilege of helping her father reclaim the future he deferred." Frank looked out at the sea of faces, parents, students, teachers, many of whom had never truly seen him before today. Among them, he spotted James Whitmore sitting beside his father, both watching with expressions of newfound respect. "Would you like to say something, Frank?" Edwards asked gently, offering the microphone. Frank hesitated, then stepped forward. "I've spent most of my adult life trying to be invisible," he began, his voice surprisingly steady. "When you're a janitor, that's often what people prefer, that you do your job without being seen. I accepted that because it gave my daughter the chance to be seen, to be recognized for her incredible mind and spirit." He turned to look at Sophia, who was wiping away tears. "Everything I've done has been for her, and I would mop floors for 20 more years without complaint if that's what she needed. But today," he looked down at the certificate in his hands, "today I'm being reminded that it's never too late to be the person you were meant to be, that sometimes life takes detours, but the journey isn't over until you decide it is." Frank took a deep breath, looking out at the students he'd watched grow up year after year. "To all the graduates, remember this: success isn't measured by how quickly you reach your destination, but by the lives you touch along the way. Sometimes the most important lessons come from the most unexpected teachers." The applause that followed was deafening. As Frank stood there, arm around his daughter, he felt a weight lifting. Not just the burden of financial struggle or deferred dreams, but the weight of invisibility he had carried for so long. Later, as the auditorium emptied, Frank and Sophia stood together looking at their certificates, her diploma and his university acceptance. "What do you think Mom would say about all this?" Sophia asked quietly. Frank smiled, picturing Maria's face. "She'd say it's about time, and she'd be incredibly proud of you." Of us, Dad, Sophia corrected, leaning her head on his shoulder. She'd be proud of us. As they walked out into the sunshine, toward a future neither could have imagined that morning, Frank realized that sometimes the most profound graduation isn't marked by a ceremony or a piece of paper, but by the moment you finally allow yourself to become who you were always meant to be. Do you believe it's ever too late to pursue your dreams? Let us know in the comments. Subscribe for more powerful stories like this, and click on the video on the screen to watch the next one with a twist so powerful you'll never forget it.